During the 19th century, the declining Ottoman Empire faced two serious threats. The first came from Russia. Russia had fought the Turks for centuries, but now the Russians were far more powerful and wished to expand further into the Balkans. The second threat came from within. Independence movements across the empire sprang up in the first half of the 19th century, but only the Greeks had achieved their independence. Then, in the 1850s, the Russians and the Ottomans fought the Crimean War. The Ottomans emerged victorious thanks to the support of Britain and France, but despite their victory, they were pressured into granting civil liberties to non-Muslims in their empire. However, it did little to suppress the rebellions and uprising in the Ottoman Empire. Plus, the Ottomans had to accept the unification of the principalities of Wallachia and Moldavia, which formed Romania. Also, during the Crimean War, the Ottomans took out loans from the Western powers, putting them into debt for the first time. Then, in the early 1870s, the empire was hit with floods, famines and drought, putting them on the brink of bankruptcy. So the Sultan increased taxes, but this only helped spark much larger rebellions. The Herzegovinians rose up first in July 1875, and the Bulgarians rebelled the following April. The Ottomans crushed the Bulgarian uprising, but their brutality caused an international outcry. Also, their failure in quelling the Herzegovinian rebellion encouraged the principalities of Serbia and Montenegro to proclaim independence and declare war on the Ottomans in mid-1876. Russian threats of war forced the Ottomans to sign a ceasefire with the Serbs, but with continuing hostilities elsewhere, the European powers met at the Constantinople Conference to try and settle the Great Eastern Crisis. However, the new Sultan, Abdul Hamid II, refused to implement any of their demands, so Russia finally had a cause for war. Previous Ottoman atrocities prevented any of the Western powers from helping them, and the Russians had signed the Reichstag Agreement with Austria. Together, the Russians and Austrians agreed how to divide the Balkans between them. Notably, Austria would receive Bosnia. So with all the European nations remaining neutral, Tsar Alexander II declared war on the Ottomans in April 1877. The Romanians allowed the Russians to cross through their territory, and then, just a month later, they declared independence. With rebellions in Herzegovina, war in Montenegro, and now Romanians and Russians crossing the border, the overstretched Ottomans could not effectively fight back. However, in the Caucasus, despite their initial gains, the Russians were temporarily halted after their failed siege of Kars. Meanwhile, in the Balkans in June 1877, the Russians lay siege to the stronghold of Plevna, while a small force took the Shipka Pass. However, the first Russian assaults on Plevna were unsuccessful, so their advance south was delayed for months. In the meantime, the small army of Russian and Bulgarian volunteers in the Shipka Pass was able to hold off a much larger Ottoman advance. It wasn't until late 1877 that the Russians finally made their breakthrough. In November, they took Kars in the Caucasus, and the following month in the Balkans, Plevna finally surrendered to an army of around 150,000 Bulgarian, Russians and Romanians. In the wake of this breakthrough, Serbia opened hostilities again with the Ottomans, and Greeks and Ypres rebelled. Although the Ottomans had called for an armistice on the 30th of January 1878, the Russians ignored it and advanced on Constantinople. But by now, the British were alarmed at the situation in the Balkans and didn't want to see the Russians gain too much power. So, in order to put an end to the hostilities, they sent a fleet to Constantinople. This stopped the Russians' advance at San Stefano, just kilometers away from Constantinople, and peace was made in early March. In the initial treaty, the Russians annexed land in the Caucasus and parts of Romania. Romania, Serbia and Montenegro all became independent and expanded their borders. Also, a large Bulgarian principality was created. But Russian influence over a powerful Bulgaria worried the Western powers, so they called the Congress of Berlin to plan the future of the Balkans. They divided Bulgaria into three parts. Bulgaria and Eastern Rumelia became autonomous provinces, while Macedonia was returned to the direct rule of the Ottoman Empire. This was possible because before the conference, the Ottomans had been able to gain favour with the British by giving them Cyprus. Also, in order to keep a balance of power in the region, the Austrians were allowed to occupy Bosnia, and Greece was given Thessaly in 1881. But this settlement was by no means permanent. Bulgaria united in 1885 and would later gain its independence. But all the territorial disputes would eventually cause the Balkan Wars in the early 20th century.